Here's a very interesting section of the programme, especially for me, because this involved donating my DNA to a genealogist and director of content at MyHeritage, and that's Myko Clelland, who we're now going to speak to. Myko, a very good morning to you. I didn't know what was in store or what this was about, but the bits of info that have been filtering back to me today are very, very interesting. So you took my DNA, my friend, and I know this is very popular with people trying to find out for historical reasons, for medical reasons, who they are and where they came from. But you took my DNA, and what did you do with it?
So this is absolutely amazing. This is what we're doing. Anyone at home can do it. All the clever stuff is taken care of by us. Just go to myheritage.com, start the process, a few clicks of a button. But if you remember, Eamonn, you took a very quick, painless swab of your cheek. No needles, no spitting. It wound its way to the laboratory, and that's where the magic happens. We compared you to millions and millions of other people. We built this picture of your heritage, all those little echoes of your ancestors that you carry around with you in your DNA that tell you exactly where you've come from up to centuries and centuries ago. And what we found was very interesting.
Before you say,
do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, well, before you say what you found, may I just say that as long as I've known Eamonn, he's always explained to me that he gets a lovely tan because his ancestors came over in the Spanish Armada, and he has this exotic Mediterranean blood that runs through his veins and perhaps gives him that Latin temperament on occasion as well. What did you find?
So most people, like you said, have these little percentages of different DNA that might show you've got maybe distant Viking ancestors or Spanish or French or German. And we could talk for the rest of the show about all of these different migrations through history. But what's fascinating about you, Eamonn, is when we dig into your genetics, you were untouched by all of them. You are entirely 100% British and Irish. These islands are your home and have been for as far back as we can see in time through DNA, century after century. Lots of people take these tests, they find these inspiring new homes of their ancestors in all these different far-flung shores. But to you, Eamonn, what's inspiring is that you are home and you always have been. And that's actually quite rare.
I mean, how rare? Just explain to me, in the entirety of your career, how many times have you encountered people of 100% heritage from the place that they were born?
I've done scores and scores of these different DNA reveals, and this is the first time it's come up for me. So it's definitely one of those things that's worth talking about.
So none of the Spanish Armada there, I'm afraid to say, Eamonn.
So I am pure, of pure heritage, but my children may not necessarily be so if their mothers are tainted in any way.
Foreign blood.
Foreign blood.
That's right.
Well,
it's worth doing tests for everyone that you're interested in finding out more about, and you never know what they might find. And when we finish looking at that mixture, these percentages, it always sparks that question, who were those ancestors then? And that's when we turn to paper records. And we've digitized billions of them. We've got one here. Wherever you are in the world watching, you can do exactly what we're doing today on myheritage.com. We did it for Eamonn, but anyone can do it. We built a family tree for you that goes back to all 8 sets of your great-great-grandparents, all those people who made you who you are. Wonderful. I want to focus on 2 sets just to give you a taste of what we can discover. And these on the screen, we're looking at your paternal great-grandparents, Leonard and Bridget Holmes. Yes. And they lived in Harding Street in the dock of Belfast in 1901. Yeah. Leonard was a boilermaker. He had 4 daughters and 4 sons with Bridget, including your grandfather, David. He was 15 at the time. They're all born and raised in Belfast. And it's like looking in the window of their house and giving us a chance to see more about them. It's fantastic.
Davy had a horse and cart and he delivered coal.
See, that's where the family stories come into the records. And one thing we did find, because when you get these core records like a census, you can start looking for stories. We found your great uncle Leonard, for example, David's brother. He had to have his toe amputated in 1913. He got it caught in a steamer hatch. Everything that happens today, all those inspiring, weird and wonderful stories, they happen to our ancestors just like us, even with all those years between us.
But I'll tell you what, Myko, that name Leonard, it's amazing. You've mentioned a couple of times there. My father was called Leonard. I have a brother who's called Leonard. It's amazing that it runs in the family. I didn't know it went that far back.
Jack will have to take on the role, or one of your boys will have to call their boys Leonard.
What about my mum's side? Because people would say that I look more like my mum's father.
I think now we might find out. So really hammering home how local your ancestors were and keeping with that echo feeling. We're going to look at your maternal great-grandparents. They lived in the same part of Belfast, only a stone's throw away, Leicester Street. Daniel Markey, stonecutter, and his wife Susan, 120 years ago. They had 9 children, including your grandmother Maggie. And we get that same window into the world. And we found this photograph of your great-grandmother. I don't know if you could see a family resemblance. She was born in 1862. We repaired and enhanced it with all the photo tools on myheritage.com. And it is really looking into that shadow of what your DNA is and who makes you who you are.
Wow.
So what was her name? She's Markey, and I think they were from Newry. They were country people who came to Belfast for work. But what was her first
Susan
name?
McAnally.
Susan McAnally. And she was
McAnally.
your mother's father's mother?
Your great-grandmother.
Great-grandmother.
Wow.
Goodness
Wonderful.
me, goodness me.
And I believe you've tracked down another relative, a living relative that Eamonn was unaware of on the other side of the world.
We have, yes. So one final revelation.
You have a daughter.
You can't have family history without family.
Sorry.
All of these ancestors come with cousins. You might need a few extra chairs at Christmas dinner now, I think, because thanks to all those millions of other people that have taken this test at myheritage.com, you've now got a list of 14,000 to catch up with from the UK, Ireland, the Netherlands, Australia, Canada, all over the world. And the closest 18 we were excited by. They range from first cousins, sharing a relative as close as a grandparent, to descendants of those great-grandparents we've looked at and that person you've seen today for the first time. And just to bring things to life, one of them has recorded a little bit of a message for you all the way from Melbourne in Australia. This is your second cousin's daughter, Kerry Nolan.
Hi, Eamonn. My name's Kerry, and I live in Melbourne in Australia. And we are cousins. My great-grandmother on my maternal line was a sister to your grandfather, David. Most of my immediate family migrated to Australia in the 70s. And my mum, who had stayed back in the UK, visited Australia on her honeymoon and stayed, resulting in me being born here. Still have a lot of family back in the UK, and visit frequently. Maybe one day we can all catch up and share stories. Lovely to meet you. All the best.
And lovely to meet you, Kerry, virtually like that. It's unbelievable. I obviously don't know. I mean, does she know that I'm on the telly and things?
She does, yes. It's just fascinating that all of these ancestors that you've shared sat around the dinner table one day and they've taken all these different paths through life. And now with DNA testing, all these records, all these tools on myheritage.com, the paths can intertwine again and make this wonderful full circle story. It's really inspiring.
It is inspiring because
Incredible.
When you are on the telly, everybody claims they're related to you.
Well, we saw it with President Biden recently, didn't we? He had endless relatives climbing out of the woodwork there, and I suppose it'd be the same for you now.
Yeah, well, I do have endless relatives anyway, but I mean, do you know, Myko, that is so interesting. I mean, what you do and what you try to do and how you can actually join up people. And I'm looking at the great-great-grandmother, the McAnally woman, and then that lady there who was on the Holmes side of the family. And you're looking for, you know, physical attributes and things if you're like them. And I'm looking at that lady Nolan's forehead, and I think we've got quite big foreheads. Is that where that comes from and whatever? But it is absolutely fascinating, and thank you very much indeed for opening that. Just to a swab of your mouth.
Well, that's why it scares me.
You're sorry you didn't do it now.
Well, I am a bit, but I'm always a bit suspicious, and you can probably put people's fears to the, allay them, because I always just think, if someone's got hold of your DNA, they can put your DNA in crime scenes, and I just would rather keep my swabs to myself, but maybe I'm overly cautious.
It's only used for family history testing. There's no other use. Everything is with your consent only. It's used just for that test, and that's all it's kept for. So no worries with anything else.
Good man.
No
fascinating journey, Myko. Thank you. Myko is a genealogist, and he's